says it is transmitting. Can't see a damn thing.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not very good at PowerPoint, so I'm just putting myself on you. PowerPoint, yeah. Uh, uh, yeah, so this last, on December 3rd, I mean, December 2nd, 3rd, the first week of December, we usually commemorated the Bhopal anniversary for the last 30 years. And in Bhopal, there are lots of events that happen, a lot of people from around the world, around India get together. This year was the 30th anniversary, or the last anniversary, the 30th anniversary. And we inaugurated People's Museum on December 3rd. And the museum was inaugurated by survivors. Almost the entire delegation that came was women, predominantly women. Came there. There were a few men as well. And the museum itself is house that they rented out from somebody. And we converted that into a museum, and it was one of the first guests who came in was a woman called Miss Bilabi. And Miss Bilabi is a middle-aged woman whose 6-year-old son died on December 2nd, 3rd. And in Bhopal, what we noticed is a lot of these people have either destroyed or given away anything that reminded them of their loved ones who were lost that time or in the days that followed. But in most of these cases, they hang on to one thing or two things that this kind of keeps that memory alive. And Bismillah we had given to this museum a sweater that belonged to Sajid. And this sweater is on display in the museum. And there's also, along with the sweater, there is also an audio recording of Bismillah narrating what she felt was going on in her mind, how she remembered the son, because after a while, it also becomes difficult to start remembering very loved ones. So it's something that people do to keep themselves, in touch. The edges get a bit blurred. So there's this story about what she talks about Sanjay, about how playful he was, about how they totally enjoyed him and how they indulged in him, and then of course about the event of the night that took away her son. And she'd given me all the toys and could not bear to part with it. Now she's given this to the museum so that it serves as a reminder, as a memory, as a story. There is also, so all these things are kept in this first room, which is called the black room. And I'll play you a small 3-minute video. But there's also the black room is the first room. So the three-room apartment, three-room house. And the first room is called a black room. It is called a black room after we opened the museum after several days where the people constantly referred to it as the Kala Kabra. And the black room has a kind of the roof has pictures of some of the dead victims, and they're trapped behind industrial piping. And the room, entire room is black in color with diffused lighting. And along the sides, there are objects of deep personal memory that have been donated by survivors. Saying that these are our stories. This is what we want people to know about our lives. There is a sari that has been given by Bhanavi, whose husband brought the sari back from a tour. He was traveling somewhere. He came back. He gave the sari to her and asked her to wear it. And she said, "No, not today." This evening, and then the next morning things had changed. Husband was very sick. She was sick as well, and husband subsequently succumbed to his exposure, as many thousands did in the days following the disaster. This sign is now being worn. It's the same plastic cover that was given in, and she's never worn that. Ever after that, she said that, "What's the point of wearing the person who gave this to me is no longer there." What is the value of this museum? I mean, I know that there have been, the doctor told me that there are some reactions from people who said, "Why are we museumizing something that is not yet over? The fight is not over." And Bhopal is about continuing the fight and knowing that you're not lost until you continue the fight. There are several reasons that come. That's going to be the kind of recurring narrative in my talk today. But one of the things is that often disasters like Bhopal tend to become very impersonal. They tend to be seen as Bhopal happened in India, with the victims or the survivors or the people who were affected were working class people. There were 50% Muslims, there were 50% Hindus, there were Muslims over there. The real story, these are people. I mean, this was the Pilaki, there was Banovi. There are many other people who lost their loved ones. And they have very personal narratives. And these personal narratives allow us also to emote with that thing on a human level. The second thing is that when these stories are being told by the survivors, it is their museum. It is not the government's museum. It is not Union Carbide's museum. If Union Carbide had made this museum, it would be a different kind of museum. If the government had made this museum, it would be a different kind of museum. Time and again, the government tried to make a museum for Bhopal, and the people said, "Please do go ahead and make the museum, but the museum has to be our museum. Our stories are to be told in the way that we want to present it." And that was, of course, the government knew that the people had to tell the stories. There'd be a lot of stories that were not very charitable, could not put the government in very good light, could not put the corporation in very good light. And so those efforts were thwarted. And at the end of the day, the museum was done by the people itself. So the second thing is who's telling the story, who's writing the history. And in this case, when the people write the history, they also want to tell people another thing. They want to tell people that the emotion that I want to invoke, the response that I want to invoke from you is not a pity. It is not an empathy. It is one of respect. And so that is why, for long there's been this whole narrative that the survivors, people of Bhopal who are now, fighting for justice, or have been fighting for justice, are survivors. They're not victims. They're not people that need to be pitied. They have agency, and they're asking you for your solidarity and not your charity. And more importantly, I think that Bhopal is no longer about the disaster that happened in a place in India to the community of Indian people. Bhopal is now a symbolic word. We say no more Bhopal, we say slow motion Bhopal, we say remember Bhopal, we say with the Bhopal in your backyard. And this Bhopal has come to symbolize corporate crime, it has come to symbolize the impunity with which corporations operate. It's come to symbolize how corporations make people powerless. So when I was in Berkeley and at the end of the presentation, some of the students said, we come from a very privileged background. We are in Berkeley, we learn to be scientists and social scientists. How is it that we can help Bhopal? And on the way coming into the Berkeley campus, I saw this protest fee hikes. So they have this, the tuition fees are being hiked. I time they come out of that, they need our help. They are not in any position to help anybody because their independence will be completely compromised. So, if you really want to fight for Bhopal, because those skills can be used in support of Bhopal, but for that you still need to be independent. You still need to be able to, make your living without selling your soul. And so for that, I think it is important to also fight your local battles for democratic space, for keeping things sane and real. And so the connection with Bhopal begins with things like how do I keep myself available for communities? Um, so the Bhopal Museum has, as I said, three rooms. We just have a quick 3-minute video, and then I will explain that and go on to the other stories. So I have a few stories from India which talk about the state of the environmental justice struggles in the country, and then we will open up for questions. And there's no voice, just on my. So the inaugural day was quite interesting, just in terms of the reactions. We had fully grown adult journalists breaking down inside the museum. They were very kind of emotional, very heart-wrenching. And in a sense, it was also catharsis because Bismillah became, she was inconsolable after that. But towards the end, she thanked the museum organizers before leaving. So, and there were other people who were also sitting there. A lot of people just going in there, coming out and relating to the things that they saw, things that their neighbors had, their stories about their neighbors. So, for the survivors itself, it is a place of reckoning, and for others who came there, both watching the survivors but also independently. It was quite the third room, particularly is a kick in the stomach. And then it's also organized as three other rooms, the total of three rooms, and the stories that the survivors wanted coming out are being foregrounded. There are stories about the battle for compensation. So there's one room that's just about the legal battles that are being fought. There's one display that shows about 10 or 15 different pieces of paper, which are all the different pieces of paper that you need before you can access the battery for compensation that is given by Union Carbide. There are other things that are books that are being used. There's the stethoscope. So the second room is a room about the healthcare. And because health is a huge issue. There are people like Champa Devi, Rashida B, who are Goldman Prize winners, basically stay alive by feeding the pharmaceutical company. I mean, they're popping pill after pill. And I think Combi is one of the best selling drugs in Bhopal. The story about health is a huge story, and that has been given a separate room. And the other big story occupies all interstitial spaces and also a separate room. Is a story about the country over fight. So we have seen this several posters that have been used, and there are people like Gary who've been associated with in Bhopal much earlier than I am. Did you recognize any of the posters? Yeah. So the posters from very long ago, from the 10th anniversary, 15th anniversary, the torch, which was used for the torchlight rally, the megaphones. So these things again talk about the spirit of the Bhopalis, about the spirit of the struggle. Um, so we look at, I mean, Bhopal, the story about Bhopal or the museum over there is nothing new. I think that it's very much part of the strategy to keep the memory alive, because at the end of the day, there is a battle being fought by Bhopalis to keep the memory alive. There's a battle being fought by Dow Chemical, Union Carbide, Government of India, and Government of the United States to make history, to make people forget it. And so it is this clash between memory and forgetfulness that we're currently seeing in the form of a struggle. And there are times when the memory kind of recedes, and there are times when it is again foregrounded. Anniversaries are usually a very important time, but the fight is kept alive between anniversaries as well. Then you will come to that with it. But if you look at social activism, it is all about keeping memories alive. And the memories might not be very old memories. It might be yesterday's memory. What happened yesterday? The story that is told by the police is very different from the story that is told by the people who are the receiving end of the police battle. And keeping these kinds of living museum, literally social activism could be seen as a living museum of the stories of ordinary people. Oftentimes, when the stories finally come out through our corporate media, they're distorted. We have a story given on time that portrayed Warren Anderson as, very unfortunate life, that, the poor man repented, it was, it was written by guilt, etc., etc., not written by guilt enough to come and face trial in India. Not guilt to forego his $500 or $2,000 golf bills. So, but then that is a portrayal of, it is a portrayal by New York Times, a very powerful media house, of Warren Anderson, a very powerful man. So I think that one is also trying to get the story that we have to tell out there to prevent these. And oftentimes the stories are hidden about what happens over there because the corporate media does not cover it. And if it is covered, it is distorted. So there is a very important need for us to occupy independent media space. So a museum, a physical museum itself, is an independent media space. It allows me to tell my story in my words. The other thing about these kinds of attempts is that museum is one of several attempts to visibilize what is otherwise invisible. If you're talking about struggles against coal-fired power plants, then recently you would have noticed that the Greenpeace has been targeted. Greenpeace is visible, but the invisible fights that have been going on for several decades in India by Adivasi indigenous people who are fighting against the state to send their lands intact is not very visible. It is good when organizations come, visibilize those struggles so that that gets more visibility. The human rights violation over there gets more visibility, and that acts as a deterrent or strengthens the struggle. We're also looking at a situation where we're fighting against very, very powerful people. Dow Chemical is one of the world's largest multinational companies. Government of India is big. Government of the United States is big. And these are three entities that have gotten together for the common purpose of forgetting Bhopal. And we have the people of Bhopal fighting against that. And the people of Bhopal have been able to keep it alive for 30 years, not because they're superhuman. They've been able to keep it alive only because of solidarity. So solidarity is something that is so crucial. The place which gave rise to the corporation that hurt them the most is also the place that gave rise to the best kind of solidarity. So historically, America has been offering solidarity even before the Indian students got involved. There's been the American unions at a time when the unions were still relevant. Now, of course, unions are losing that kind of hold that they had, and we have to find ways to give them solidarity. But there are also new formations coming up in the US in terms of labor collectives, which are looking at solidarity to struggles around the world. The second issue that we need to keep in mind is that we are fighting for keeping memories alive in an era where attention span is very, very short. The corporate media has made it so our own, exposure to just a vast number of things has made it such that we're not able to pay attention to one thing for a very long time. And there are many things that are happening that demand our attention to. So in this context, there is a need to not just record the history, but there's a need to speak history, and there's a need to make it heard. So it's not enough if I'm speaking, sitting somewhere in the corner. I need to be able to reach out to people and speak to them. So with that as a thing, let me just take you back to some of the issues that are happening in India. So this is an agitation that was part of, I'm part of an anti-corporate collective in Chennai called Vetiver Collective. And basically we bring together people for various struggles, and the people might be different groups of people. And we're in the fight against the Kudam nuclear reactor. This is a nuclear reactor that is that's been built with Russian assistance in the state of Tamil Nadu, where I come from, the southern Indian state. It's a 1,000 megawatt reactor. There are two such units currently being. One is commissioned, the other is being built and close to completion. But in March 2011, after the Fukushima accident, the people of living around this nuclear power plant, who had by then been given free television sets by our former chief minister, managed to see 24/7 coverage of how this nuclear reactor and the disaster brought a community where Japanese have been held as in very high esteem. These are people who are the kings of technology. They can manage everything. And we saw the Japanese being brought to their knees. And they were just looking at it and saying, what just happens in India? We don't know how to stand in a line. We don't know which way to run. Our government does not know where it's coming or going. So how do we, and obviously the people speak up. They got really scared. And this was a time when a massive agitation against a plant that was almost close to being completed was begun. It is one of the largest mobilizations in Tamil Nadu, notwithstanding after the anti-Hindi agitation in the several decades ago. And this agitation then became a place of contestation of what are the people trying to say? What does the state say that the people are trying to say? What are the people's motives? And what is the state imputing as their motives? So this is the picture from the background. It's a shot that's been taken by a good friend and a photographer called Amit Stephen. And Amit Stephen, as a photographer, has been chronicling the struggle. You can chronicle the struggle from the side of the state or from the side of the people. And he's been there chronicling it from the side of the people. The state's portrayal of this, first it said it is an agitation by ignorant people, because people considered to be unscientific, although their method of fishing is very scientific. They go to the same places without the aid of any instruments and are able to cast their net. They know the flow of currents. All these are what we call science. But they're being called unscientific people, ignorant people who are being misinformed by outsiders with some kind of message. They happen to be Catholic, and this is even before Mr. Modi came into power. The Congress government imputed that the Pope must be instigating them. The Pope has got a lot of things in his hands. And I think that he does not have the kind of time it takes to instigate a bunch of villagers, 2 villages or 3 villages to fight against a nuclear power plant. But that was just thrown out there. Yeah, take this, it's a Catholic church. And you have the media playing that, and you have a bunch of people saying, really? Is the Pope really doing this? The Pope must be a very bad man. So these kinds of narratives start getting generated. And then we have this thing. This is a common thing. This is one of the most resistant and probably one of the most successful, um, trope to play, and which is that anti-national. These are a bunch of anti-nationals. So what the state did in order to prove that they're anti-national is file cases of sedition against the legislators. So you have a total of 20 cases, out of which 21 cases, out of which I think 10 cases are sedition, and 10 are waging war against the state for having a non-violent demonstration against the nuclear power plant. In total, there are close to 350 cases so far against more than 250,000 people. That's an entire assembly constituency of people who have been declared offenders and accused. This includes children, adults, mothers, grandmothers, and everybody. Then, of course, the other is the more recent one, the Maoist frame that is invoked. And then finally, when none of this worked, they said these are people who are mentally unstable, and we have recruited the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh that he had recruited the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore to come and help them so that they can lose their fear of the nuclear reactor. So this is this thing of violent people being fixed against gentle, reasonable state. And these are the kinds of things that stay behind. We need to fight against this kind of thing. But in reality, if you're looking at the kind of, if you were to build, and it is very possible, one of the opportunities that Bhopal gives us is to tie in with other communities around the country, around the world, and taking up memorabilia from there. There were things that happened over there. I'm sure that we go to Puramura, we can get memories from there, carry it forward, maybe have a small little corner for Puramura for 3 months in the Bhopal Museum, have a Bhopal exhibit coming over there, and have conversations happen. It will fight by children, by people, and on the other side was this. This is not often seen. Because normally what happens is the police, the media people, like your embedded journalists, are standing inside where the policemen are, shooting, looking at the agitators. This is a video taken by Amir. If you can see that the photograph was taken, but yes, it's a matter of a point of view. The history is about a point of view. I can take the photograph from there and say, rioting mobs dispersed by police. And you take the picture from here, it tells you a different story. Again, the violence, who was the victim? This is a person called Sahayam Francis, a real human being, with his wife, 2 young daughters. And he was killed when they had a water protest. Basically, they were all going to stand in water to protest against the power plant. And the Coast Guard plane flew so close to him that he lost his footing, hit his head on the rock, and he died. And this is one of several people who were killed during the protest. This again is something that the government does not like to put in this museum. The police entered the village, vandalized the church, urinated inside the church, broke the statue of Virgin Mary, and this is something this symbolic for people. It agitates them, it saddens them, and it actually makes them question the loyalty of the government to the people. We're constantly saying that the people have to be loyal to the government. What about the government's loyalty towards its people? If you look at Bhopal, and there are several lessons that can be done. There are 3 that I keep talking about. One of the lessons is the lesson about cycling. Bhopal, the factory was an under-designed, dangerous factory located in a densely populated working class neighborhood. And all these things are bad. Under-designed is bad, dangerous is bad, densely populated working class locality is bad. And then so when it does blow up, it is likely to because it's been under-designed. The consequences can be tremendous. The second was the issue of safety. So besides the actual thing of introducing a screening mechanism to ensure that you get very good technology coming in there, you also need mechanisms by which they can be held accountable. There is a fear that they should not be under designing over there, and usually it is done through liability mechanisms. What are the kind of liability mechanisms that you develop beforehand to deter people from supplying under designed or poor quality equipment? And the third is, after you're taken care of as a good government, taking care of proper siting, good kind of liability laws, and good safety screening, in the event that something happens, because there's nothing called 100% in technology. So in the event that something happens, then how do you quickly ensure that the people who have been affected are rehabilitated in all senses of the word, and how the environment, if it has been affected, that can be rehabilitated. So these are the three kind of lessons. So I'd like to go through quickly case studies, three examples about what's happening. When we talk about siting, it is not just a matter of locating a dangerous factory in a crowded neighborhood. If you want to locate an industry, then the industry needs to be located in a place where it is not likely to. It's likely. The idea behind locating an industry is to make a place prosperous. That is the logic that is being given. So it must not impoverish the area, must not make the area more vulnerable. And so we have this case of a 4,000 megawatt coal-fired power plant. This is something that was started by the previous government. As far as it's a policy called the Ultra Mega Power Project. Particular power plant is coming up in my home state in Tamil Nadu, one district south of where I live. I live in Chennai, and this is coming up in a district called Kanchipuram. The coastal districts of Tamil Nadu are also the places where bulk of the agriculture. So if you look at this, the box is the green color is Kanchipuram district, and Chennai is just at the place where the red line is crossing. And Chennai is a southernmost Tamil. It's like a sub-district level, southernmost Tamil in Kanchipuram. So what we have over here, we have a plant that is like that. If we allow it, will generate 4,000. It will be set up to generate 4,000 megawatts per electricity. To generate this electricity, you need to burn about 40,000 tons of coal every day. You will have to take water, about 864 million liters of water, and discharge about 523.5 million liters of hot water into the sea. This will have consequences. When you discharge hot water into the sea temperature, when it goes up, the amount of dissolved oxygen goes down, and the marine life suffers. And the animals that can will run away, but the food sources like phytoplankton will die, creating deserts, localized deserts. You also have, when you burn 40,000 tons, you generate roughly a tenth of it as ash. And so you have about 5,400 tons of ash that needs to be disposed somewhere. That's what it's this is a kind of land requirement. So if you look at the lay of the land in this place, in most of Tamil Nadu, we have what we call a high energy coastline. There is nothing that separates Tamil Nadu from Singapore. So it's just open sea. And so there's very high velocity winds that come. We see transport and along the currents, and that sand gets deposited from the shore, and that gets blown in to make these beautiful dunes. And these dunes are not just beautiful; they're also very important as storm mitigators. When the tsunami happened, the reason why it did not hurt a lot of the inland areas is because the dunes kind of impeded the force of the waves. What is more important is that this portion, this area, is the thing that makes the land behave so that the sea does not get hurt, and the sea behaves so that the land does not get hurt. So the way that happens is, one way that the sea gets hurt, the inland, is by sending the salt water and the salt air that will destroy the agriculture. Kanchipuram, Tiruvallur, Nagapattinam, these are the places where paddies grow. And if seawater comes into the groundwater, we are finished. And these dunes are like reservoirs of fresh water that can form a lens and keep the seawater away. If I start packing the dunes, then the seawater invades inside. Contact comes in, and we have a huge economic problem. What also happens is we will have a problem in a climate vulnerable or climate change scenario where we will be increasingly vulnerable, or we will be made even more vulnerable than we already are to what we know as a certainty, more frequent and more intense extreme weather events. This area is also characterized by a lot of estuaries, mangrove soil with seagrass beds, highly productive, carbon sequestering. So, if you look at it, this is your natural shock absorber or climate, anything the climate wants to throw at us. If you want to throw water, this can go next. If you want to throw water, then it will be taken by this large network of lakes that empty into the other and finally come out to an estuary and flow out into the sea. So these things The groundwater is recharged, the fresh water can keep the salt water. So it's all intricately connected and something that is vital to our resilience in a normal scenario, but more importantly, what we know is something that's going to happen in climate change. There are also, very dense patches of forest which are used for multiple purposes, both to support the economy and also as a biodiversity area. Uh, so what's happening over here is we're going to have three separate components. One is a port that will come up to the sand dune area, flattening that area, and that will store about 300,000 tons of coal in between two fishing villages. A power plant that will come up in roughly about 1,000 acres, and an ash pond, which is where your 5,000 tons of ash every day will be taken and dumped over there. And these things are connected. You have a pipeline that takes the ash there. You have a conveyor belt that goes across one dune, two dunes, or a third dune, and then it goes to the power plant. It generates electricity, and the electricity will not light up the houses over here. It will go to Madras, it will go to Pondicherry, it will go to Bangalore, and light up the industries and power the industries in those areas. So I've already shown you the lay of the land. So in such a place, you are not allowed to set up a power plant. As simple as that. There is no debate about whether you like coal, you don't like coal, you want nuclear, no nuclear. You do not set up a coal-fired power plant where there is water. You do not flatten dunes. You do not hurt groundwater. You do not, decimate or threaten in any way mangroves. Densities are very important in destabilized fisheries. So all those things are not to be done. I might like coal, you might hate it, but no matter what, that power plant cannot come in a place like this. We building a power plant in a place by saying that all of those things don't exist. So they made these claims in their what is called a Form 1. It's a statutory submission to the government of India. And in the government of India, you have experts. And these experts probably had to pay huge loans on their original student tuition fee. So these are experts without a spine. And so they sit down there and they're given all these things. No sensitive areas, no scarce resources such as water. It's been spelled out. Are there any scarce resources such as fresh water? Close bracket. No. No sand dunes, no migratory species, no mangroves, no agriculture, and no forest. This is a satellite image that incidentally was found in their own submissions. And all these blue things are water bodies. So we applied the right information to the Public Works Department and asked them how many water bodies, and they two water bodies irrigating about 60,000 hectares. So the trend has been made. If you look at this, this is a massive lagoon. This is another huge backwater area. There are two estuaries. These are the two things that are mangrove studied, very important for the fisheries and for the storm mitigation and flood mitigation. So we also did a study that, besides the fact that, in order to go to this place, you have to climb a hill, which is the sand dune. That is not enough. You actually have to document saying that the hill that I'm standing on is a sand dune. And so that documentation requires some money and requires experts with the money. So we got that done and there was a separate report. There was a community mapping of sand dunes. The expert appraisal committee that assesses this application. In giving the clearance, it says that there is 82% agricultural land in the project site. But the company has said that the reason why we choose this project is because there is no agriculture. No water, and no birds. It's a very important bird area. So it's been declared as an important bird area by the Bombay National Society and the Royal Society for Protection of Birds. And this is what we found over no forest, again very similar, highly biodiverse. It is an endangered forest type called the tropical dry evergreen forest. And so, why should it not be located in such a place? So the reason why coal and water, coal and agriculture don't go well is because of what coal has. And the coal is not just carbon and hydrogen. Besides being, drops of sunlight from about a few million years ago, these particles of coal are very good at absorbing the poison cells in the soil around it. And so it kind of concentrates these things, this metal and trace quantities, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, etc. Second column is actually the number of milligrams per kilogram of coal. So if I take a kilogram of American coal, it will have on average about 7.6 milligrams of arsenic. In a day, if I burn 40,000 tons, I will generate 342 kilograms of arsenic. And so if you give an engineer this problem, he say, we will solve this problem, no problem. 342 tons of kilograms of arsenic, if it's going up to the smokestack, we'll put a filter over there. What do you do with the filter? We take it and put it inside the ash pond. What do you do in the ash pond if it leaks? We will collect all the leachate and we will bring it in the effluent treatment pond. We will get leachate, we get sludge from that, we take that and put it in an incinerator. So this engineer will take you on a merry-go-round, trying to move the poison from one place to another. But at the end of the day, what you are dealing with is all these are emissions from the power plant that will have to go somewhere. In all likelihood, remain in the local environment. Yeah. So if you look at where most of this would go, things like mercury tend to vaporize and go into the environment, will settle into the water bodies over here, and from undetectable levels in the water or soil, they'll come back, build up to lethal levels in the fish or things that are higher up in the food chain to come and affect human beings. But the other stuff, the heavier stuff that might go with the ash, will be dumped over here. This place is upgrading of these areas. So water has to flow. Even if the pollution control board of the company or Mr. Modi says water should not flow down, it will flow. And when it comes down, it will contaminate these lakes. It will also hurt the agriculture in this area. And ash ponds, these places where ash is stored, like what we recently had in somewhere in America, I don't know, there's a huge ash pond breach, was it in Virginia or somewhere? And one river got, it, the river got polluted. Sorry? Carolina? Yeah. So these ponds tend to break because this ash is tremendously heavy. And if it does that, then this entire region is likely to be hurt. And so what you're doing is instead of generating electricity or energy, you're losing energy. If you damage this area produces tremendous amount of energy in the form of paddy, which is food that allows people to go around doing things. That is energy. In the form of water. Because water, if you destroy this water, I'll have to desalinate or I'll have to transport water from a large distance. That is energy. So energy is a real currency. And one form of energy is electricity. Probably the least important form as far as India is concerned. It contributes roughly 18% to our total energy needs. And that form of energy, we are willing to sacrifice all these other forms of energy in order to get that one electricity, which again goes for energy. A story about the fact that we have not internalized the story about sighting. It is not just about accidents, but what happens on a regular basis as a result of your design. And so this is a project that is being vetted by 1,000 scientists and it's coming up in what is a disaster. So the second story I have to tell about is going to do about liability. The second story is about safety and liability. On this one, interestingly, a lesson has been learned. And in this one, both the survivors and the government say that victims of disasters like Bhopal have to be protected in the future. The only departure in this between the government of India and the people of India is that the people of India feel that the human beings whose lives were lost and devastated as a result of the disaster are the people who are deserving of protection. The government feels that the corporations that caused the disaster have been unduly victimized. So you have a very unfortunate union carbide and its subsequent successor in Dow Chemical who have been thwarted at every attempt from doing business in India for something that happened 30 years ago by a bunch of unreasonable Bhopalis and their ragtag bunch of supporters all over the world. Dow Chemical had wonderful designs of coming and investing $1 billion in India to enrich India, its own shareholders, but the Bhopalis did not allow them. There are legal cases that are lingering on every aspect. So Bhopal was about compensation, medical rehabilitation, criminal justice, and environmental rehabilitation. All these four issues after 30 years are still in the courts. And so the United States government, the Indian government, and Dow Chemical, Union Carbide, and other corporations, American corporations, have said that this kind of a situation where liabilities like this are allowed to linger for such a long time by unreasonable people like the Bhopalis, we need to find some mechanism to ensure that the come in, we get a disaster, we take care of it, and we go to the next one. You can't keep having this stopping you from investing further because everybody is very nervous. Dow Chemical has not been able to invest the $1 billion because we've stopped them at every step of the way. So then what happens is a new liability law is being brought. So we have a new liability law is currently being debated. If you know that when Mr. Modi and Mr. Obama met in Delhi, there was a lot of talk about a breakthrough deal. And that breakthrough deal essentially was this, where Mr. Modi came and told Mr. Obama that yes, right now the law in the past that has been passed by the parliament gives us a small window which allows India to sue a nuclear equipment supplier for damages in case the nuclear equipment supplier supplies under-designed or ill-designed reactors. But we will guarantee that no such claim will be made, that any disaster that your companies like Westinghouse or General Electric may cause in India will be indemnified by the government of India. So what has happened literally in these companies have said that our 100% safe nuclear reactors we will bring and give to you. And you have to believe us. If you say it is not 100% safe, we will call you Maoist, we will call you anti-national, we will call you mentor, and we will make your life miserable because you refuse to believe that it's 100% safe. But on the other hand, do we believe it's 100% safe? No. Because insurance doesn't, insurance companies don't believe it's 100% safe. That's a marginal error. And so these companies are saying that our technologies, in public relations, we will say it's 100% safe. But as far as putting the technologies over there, we want a guarantee to the government that if it blows up, the government will take care. So the government has now proposed a liability cap of $450 million, roughly the same level that was given for Bhopal. And that translated in Bhopal to roughly 25,000 rupees or $450 a person. And this is for that is for a chemical disaster. A nuclear disaster is much larger. It might not take lives immediately, but it devastates economies and virtually irreparable. We have the fallout of Chernobyl. Belarus has spent more than $235 million to date in trying to rehabilitate people, not the cleanup. It is not for retiring those reactors or for containing the radioactivity there. Fukushima, the bill has gone up in excess of $100 billion, again, only for rehabilitation. And you're likely to see it go up by several more billion dollars before the through. And here we have the government of India saying $40 million will be given. That will be given by the taxpayers of India. And any additional amount can also be given, and that can also be given by the taxpayers of India. So that is the lesson that has been learned as far as the safety is concerned. There, of course, fortunately, there is a very vibrant and quite dynamic democracy in India, despite the government. And so there are ways in which many of these things are being challenged. And so nothing is really a done deal. What has been said, the Prime Minister or the Minister of Power says that we are going to invest and we're going to have 1.5 million tons of coal coming out of the ground, which will treble the number of the amount of coal being produced in the next 5 years. I think he's dreaming. It is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen is not because of laws, it's because of people. People will not allow it to happen. And now the government is trying to look at ways in which they can make it happen by dealing with two things. They're looking at two things as the major impediments to their model of growth. One is environmental protection, a huge impediment to growth, and the second is democracy. If we can undo these two things, we unlock the magic room of growth. And those things are currently being actively attempted. There is a land bill, and this where I'm saying there's a lot to be optimistic about. There's a big fight on, and even if the land bill gets passed by Australia or whatever, the people on the ground don't allow it. At the end of the day, the Supreme Court might say, this land must be vacated and people can move it. The Supreme Court is not going to come with a stick and stand there. People don't allow it on the ground. We have the case of Costco, we have the case of Nambigra, we have numerous cases. The writer, SEZ, the Reliance, on paper had acquired 25,000 acres. On the ground, they acquired not 1 acre. This is a story about rehabilitation. So we come because of disaster, and then we rehabilitate very quickly and move on to the next one. So this is a story about a place called Kodaikanal, again from Tamil Nadu. It's a very beautiful hill town. Lots of boarding schools. Uh, of a company, Hindustan Lever, that was called Hindustan Unilever. Hindustan Lever is very interesting. We can leave Hindustan Unilever, they call it now. And Hindustan Unilever, we all know the company very well. They smell good, they're cute, they're cuddly, they make things that go into your mouth, they make things that you wear, they make things that can attract the opposite sex, they make things that make our dark sisters fair and lovely. So Hindustan Lever operated, they purchased in the 1980s, around again, was a plant, a mercury thermometer plant that is being run in a place called Watertown in New York by a company called Chesbro Farms. And Unilever at the time also had some stake in this company. And interestingly, around that time, there were lots of good things happening in America because of the increased heightened environmental consciousness post Rachel Carson. There's a lot of focus on the Great Lakes. And there's something called the International Joint Commission on the Great Lakes that was set up to try and start addressing pollutants that travel without passports across boundaries, across national boundaries. And some of these pollutants were things like sulfur dioxide, mercury, polychlorinated biphenyls, DDT, etc. And as part of that bilateral phase out, they also identified several facilities that need to be closed down, polluting facilities that need to be closed down. And there was one, the thermometer unit was one that was actually contributing a lot of mercury that eventually ended up inside the Great Lakes. So this facility was closed down, and when it was closed down, the place was cleaned up, but this facility was taken and exported to India. And the way they brought it into India and set it up over here, this is a beautiful residential area. And on the other side, when you see the mist, is the slope that goes down. It's called Pamba Shola. And Shola is a very special type of submontane evergreen forest. Very dense. It's like the rainforest. It's not a rainforest. It's like rainforest. There's not much undergrowth. Very thick canopy on top, and a very thick layer of leaf litter, which is usually broken down by microorganisms that are very susceptible to very small amounts of toxins. It's also a watershed. These kinds of dense forests, because they break the velocity of water as they're falling down, they prevent soil erosion, and the water is kind of retained by the bed. It's like a sponge, and it's kind of squeezed out through streams. So almost all shola forests give rise to streams that run into rivers, very important for water. And Tamil Nadu is a water starved state all the time, has been historically. So Hindustan Lever has located itself on a ridge, on one side of which you have the Pamba Shola. So what did they do? They did what most companies do. This was an export-oriented unit, so they import glass from several countries. They import mercury from Pennsylvania, and they export the finished thermometers to the same market where they were shut out of earlier. And what do they leave behind in India? They leave behind the mercury wastes. So this is glass waste. So how we found about this? I found out about this was in 2000, towards the end of 2000, a friend of ours told us that he's got somebody who's got two buckets full of broken thermometers with mercury. And then they started digging around and found that there's a 7.2 ton mercury dump in a cracker. You see those guys sitting over there? So this photograph is in the same place. So where it is, that is where these guys are sitting. His son, what the scrap dealer's son, was also playing over there. We later learned that he used to suck out the mercury using a straw, put it inside a jar, and collect the mercury. This is a game. All of us love playing with mercury. We played mercury with the children without knowing. But this is large quantities of mercury. The boy died subsequently before he reached 20. This woman is no more. And this consequence was just dumped over there by a company that claims to be. If you look at their public relations, they sound like the Mother Teresa of corporate work. And the CEO is somebody who talks about compassionate capitalism and about how it is possible to make money without hurting communities. And they actually have models for it. you can promote global health by Lifebuoy. You can empower women by Fair and Lovely. You can have a toilet in every house. Domex is a brand name. So for everything, they've actually managed to monetize poverty reduction, climate adaptation. So, and this is what is happening over here. In 2001, when we found this out, residents of the town, environmental organizations, and some of the ex-workers came, we marched. They also dumped in the Ambassador forest. These are the bottles. And actually, if you look at it closely, there's a bottle from a company called Bethlehem Apparatus, which is a company in Pennsylvania. And this was found dumped behind the factory. So on March 7th, 2001, there was a rally delegation from the scrapyard to the factory site and shut down the factory. At that time, we had a very good leader in the pollution control board who immediately issued closure orders, and the factory has never opened since then. But our problems we had right there. We had children who were sick, many of whom are dead. Many of these children are dead. This boy is still around. He's okay, except for the fact that he has chronic ulcers. His brother, he's got a twin brother as well, who's got joint problems and leg problems, but and also they all suffer from attention deficit problems. This boy is much older, virtually uncontrollable in class. Teachers keep sending him back. All of these are people that we suspect might be affected by mercury. Most of those kids are no longer with us. We also had a large number of workers, more than 600 workers who've gone through the factory. These workers were provided with no protective equipment. The Government of India Committee report in 2011 found that the occupational hygiene conditions were very poor in this factory and that workers had been exposed and many of them are suffering from health effects and the compensation was completed. But that is in 2011 November. The courts are wonderful courts are still sitting on it. In the meantime, after they've gone to court, nearly 25 workers are died. And if the High Court passes an order in our favor, the company will appeal to the Supreme Court. And if they pass an order against us, we will appeal to the Supreme Court. So by the time a decision is made, most of the workers will be gone. And that is this wait and watch game, this wait and play cat and mouse game the corporations play. Because their stamina to stand it out is does not, is vastly more than our stamina to fight it out, and that's what they think. Bhopal has proven it wrong. But it is true that there's a lot of fatigue in these days. And the corporations try to use that. Solidarity usually helps take care of that fatigue. And that's why we go now talking about that thing. Because one message of solidarity, probably 3 years more, they will fight. More acts of solidarity keeps the fight long enough to actually make these companies. So this is a story about so Unilever as a company. I mean, if you look at the liability in Bhopal for Dow Chemical or in Kodaikanal for Unilever, it is actually pocket change. It's probably, I think that Mr. Paul Pullman takes home roughly about $6 million. And I think 2 years ago, he got a $700,000 sustainability bonus. It's because the company has been sustainable, they get a bonus of about $700,000. I think 2 or 3 years of the salary will actually take care of the situation in particular. It's not a lot of money. And if you're looking at their claims, Unilever's claims around the world, it's like we are involved in poverty reduction. And here you're putting families into poverty. We got communities that were okay, they were not very well off. But I don't think Mr. Paulman knows what it is to bring up a child that has a brain that has been affected by mercury, especially for a vulnerable family. One of the members of the family cannot go to work, which means that you're working on half the income. Then you have more money to take care of the child's needs, the healthcare needs. The father or the mother, or probably both, are also probably affected. So you have a crippled economy. And these are the people who are fighting. These are the invisible people who are actually fighting the fight against some of the largest multinationals. But if you look at Unilever, they have a partnership with the Guardian. So they're creating history. Their stories are being told by Guardian. Guardian newspaper is the messiah of environmental activism. But they are in partnership with Unilever and talk about Unilever sustainability campaign. Where is the story of the child who has been brain damaged, or the mother who can't go to work, or the family that is being pushed into poverty come out wrong? So I think in this there's is also another inherent dilemma that we come up with, and I conclude here. And one is that one of the dilemmas is the dilemma about what do we do with these corporations? Do you think they can really be reformed? Do we have to break them down? If you're talking about compassionate Mother Teresa Corporation, Mr. Unilever, behaving like this, then what do we talk about other corporations? How does one deal with this? Because we're hearing a lot. We're hearing about the solution to the climate problem as renewable energy, solar. So Kudankulam is 1,000 megawatts. Kudankulam can be replaced by 1,000 megawatt solar or 1,000 megawatt wind. But is that the problem? Or is the problem that the 1,000 megawatts from Kudankulam or solar or wind is going to the wrong place to create more problems? Is there a problem with the growth-oriented economy? How long will you grow? I mean, if growth is a biological concept, it's been borrowed from biology or from the natural sciences, then there is a birth, there is a growth, then there is decay and death. Even sun was born, will grow, is in decay and will die. But Mr. Monte Singh Ahluwalia's growth, or Mr. Narendra Modi's growth, or IMF's growth, then absolutely no deal. We're still talking about India growing at 12%. You will finish off what's there. If you grow for another 5 years, there's nothing left. Because in order to grow, you need a substrate, you need a natural basis for that. You need water. We're talking about the Make in India campaign for India. What will you make in India? With what will you make in India? You need water, you need land, you need resources. If you take out resources, you need water. And in order to build, you need other resources like steel, you need coal, and then you will construct, you need water for these things. You hardly have water to drink. You have 4% of the globe's water supply and 16% of the population. What growth are you talking about? What manufacturing are you talking about? What is the idea behind your economy? I think it is bunkum. And unfortunately, the smartest people have also fallen victim to this. I was recently in Stanford University for a talk, and I was very happy to be there because we use a lot of Stanford's papers for talking about climate change. They do very authoritative papers, very smart people with many letters behind their names. And you go there, there's another paper that was published that talked about California's regrets for drought, fourth year on without rain. Then Stanford had blamed that on climate change, rightly so. But you go to Stanford, you make it seem as if these are scientists without common sense because you have large, sprawling lawns and golf courses that are perfectly manicured, tons of water being sprayed on them. I mean, what do these people think? So on the one hand, you've written this authoritative paper, you're going around telling the world, government of India will invite Stanford to come there and tell them, what do we do about climate change? I will tell you what you do. You first turn off those lamps. Let them be brown. It's totally okay to be brown. So you have, I think that there is a problem with this cleverness inside these educational institutions. They're very so full of themselves that you cannot see the common sense around it, things that need to be done around. Or if you see it, you don't have the guts to change. That's because you need your tenure for that, or you have to pay your student loans. So I think that, again, going back to it, the fight is a smaller fight. The fight is usually a local fight. The fight is to keep your spaces inside your campus alive, to keep it accessible and affordable to all, and to keep those spaces outside alive so that it is okay for people to want nuclear, coal, or wind. But there must be an unvitiated space to discuss this, debate it, and come up with a deadline. Any questions or comments? Yeah, I think that not just India. I would say that companies do more wrong when they're allowed to do more. I mean, corporations are set up like that. So it is not originally the mission was that corporations have to maximize their profit for shareholders using legal means. Now it is that corporations are allowed to maximize profit, are supposed to maximize profit for shareholders using any means possible as long as you don't get caught. So then it's a matter as to where you can get caught more easily and where you can't. some countries the consequences may be more, in some countries less. So that it depends on that.
Please talk a little bit more about what the consensus was. It needs some sort of music about it and extreme. And I'm not sure exactly what theme was from.
So I think that anything to do with the nuclear issue, we usually rely heavily on astrology and speculation. So I will also do the same thing. We have newspaper reports on a number of other things. We try to patch together, things, give you a story. It might be completely wrong, but yeah. There are two clauses in the Nuclear Liability Act. One that talks about the uh, ability to sue the supplier, and on that there's a cap of about $450 million. And there's a certain clause that says that it has to be written into the contract. So what the on that particular thing, so if it's not written into the contract, then the operator will not be able to sue the supplier. The operator in India is the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. It's a government of India company, and so if the contract between Westinghouse and NPCIL says that does not say that right to recourse that operator can sue supplier, then that particular avenue is taken care of, provided the contract says that. Now, Mr. Modi's assurance is, yeah, excuse me, okay, that is part of the deal. That might be okay for now, but if it's not in power 5 years down the line, then that is the problem. The second issue is there's another clause that allows for a small window, which will what do you call it? Will allow for citizen or any other person to go back to the supplier. This is called absolute liability, something that also arises from Bhopal. Is that the person who's caused the damage cannot run away. So to ensure that there's a small window, I think it's called Section 49, that allows for liability to pass on to the supplier. That is causing a lot of nervousness among the particular suppliers. And that also they have sought to shut it down. And that they basically got a legal opinion saying that it's a legal opinion from the Attorney General that says that this window cannot be used to sue the supplier. Now, that legal opinion, if it really exists, can be tried by somebody else only an opinion. It's not an order, it's not a judgment. It is not something finally the courts will decide whether it can or not. As long as the courts decide, the nervousness does not go away. Companies are like that. They want certainty. At least they claim to be, betting on risks and stuff like that, but they like to reduce the risks as far as they can. So these are the two things that I speculate, or some soothsayer spoke over them. So that for Chino, we have tried to figure that out. We have absolutely no idea where they came there. But one of the see, it needs to make economic sense for them to be located somewhere. You cannot ask me to go and locate in the middle of Thar Desert. I need access to road. I need access to raw materials. I need to be able to evacuate my product, and I need a market for my product. So, looking at it from these kind of business criteria, Chino is a good place. There is a sea nearby. There are two ports nearby, or I can build a captive port. There's the East Coast Road, so that allows me to transport equipment. You have the NH45 on the other side location. Beyond that, Tamil Nadu wants to build the 90.3 industrial corridor, so there's likely to be a good market for the power. So all those things are okay. The rest of it can be easily managed. A lot of times, the choice of a site, if it fulfills these criteria, because if it doesn't fulfill this criteria, our business is not going to go in. So overcome all these criteria, we have the other environmental criteria, etc. Not given usually a lot of attention because there is this belief that uh, resistance can be overcome by two forms of study. One is the baton of the police, and the other is a suitcase. You go with money in one hand and the baton in the other, and you keep waving the two, and it is usually, at least in states like Tamil Nadu, it is successful. So that is the other hope that any place can be overcome. Once you set up, then there's nothing that can be done. No court will touch it. They'll say, oh, this all kinds of things, we need electricity. What is it? We need electricity. And it's saying he needs electricity. And they don't shut down. So that company, the power plant can violate any law under the universe. Will not be shut down. Okay, so that is something that's a very problematic thing. The second thing on citing. That's all you asked, right? Yeah. So the criteria we don't always know, but they're also looking at developing backward regions. But usually what they do is they push regions to impoverishment. Like the place where the Costco plant is coming up is not prosperous area. And the location of the plant over there will actually diminish the economy of the region.
Talk about control the narrative and the transformation of these issues and using mainstream media. What would the alternate citizen-led media? I mean, how do you see that evolving in India? Can you give us some examples of that and how that is impacting the
The electronic media is very difficult to have in store. Let's say we're talking about the television, very difficult because it's expensive and it's very hard. It's very difficult to duplicate or to replicate that level of stability in terms of narrative, like Anapur or whatever. They're very difficult to replicate that. But the print media, there is a good amount of diversity. So even though we have corporate media and message media, but we have this corporate competition, so somebody will cover a story. It is possible to shop for in the print media. Then you have, of course, little magazines, particularly like in Tamil, there are little magazines which will come out with very small circulation, but read by very influential people. You have blogs, and of course, Facebook is there. But Facebook, the problem is that you're speaking to your own kind of people. You don't need to speak to a diverse group of people. Uh, Blogs and websites are gaining in prominence. Actually, in India, there are now, if you look at English language, there are many kafilas, left leaning, but a lot of other people also read it. Critical people also read it. You have Scroll, you have First Post, you have, so there's a large number of people. So some of the times, some of the newspapers or websites and portals might not take an article that is exposing the XY company, but another reporter would take that. So that I think that it is not exactly the way it should be. It's very difficult even for print magazines. I think Tehilka was an example. They tried to make it as an independent media, but it's not right now. I think that Tehilka is now low. Very difficult to run print publications or television publications commercially without very big money involved. And very big money usually comes with very big bad people funding very big money or vested interest funding that, and that kind of really internet remains a place which is still open, is being used, can be used a lot more, and has a wide reach. Like say a decade ago, has a wide reach. Mobile phones, again, there's something called CG-led Swara that is being started from Central India, making great range, which is citizen journalism. People call up from their mobile to a certain number, and I can say the hand pump in my village is not working, and the Tahsildar is asking for a bride. And this gets broadcast around, has been having a lot of success, and there are more models like this coming up.
What would you say is very disturbing? And I think that regulation, I think is something that is a point of organizing, besides the internet, but getting information. So what's the point of organizing? A point that we can organize.
So actually, I don't know. I thought in all the other places I was being criticized for being very optimistic. Because I do come from a very optimistic, I see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, especially because we are close to the end of the tunnel. I mean, with the new government coming in, things have gotten worse. And so I do see a turnaround. What I do see is that despite the kind of despite the legal and the attack on the law is being fought in India, I think that one of the things that could be better is networking within the country. That has not been very effective so far. We're divided by languages, regions, distances, and lack of resources. And so that has prevented a kind of coming together. That might not be, and there are many, many places where there are, battles being fought and not being visibilized enough. Um, in terms of the technical point of organizing, I don't know, but there are several kinds of things that people are organizing around on issues of land, the issue of electricity. Again, is bringing a lot of people together. From the West, it is being seen as an anti-coal, but we're not looking at it as an anti-coal. I was just talking to Gary about it. It is something that's coal comes with a massive land use cost, and there's a land use cost that is being fought by people. So I think that again on that one, and the possibilities of fossil fuel free economy, where the electricity that is generated from that goes to supplying rational, sensible kind of uses and not extravagant uses. This kind of a discourse is also coming from India. And I see that one of the reasons why I feel it is very positive is because no other country is talking about it. Here in America, we just had a recent announcement that in America the economy continued to grow despite increasing its emissions or increasing the energy intensity. And there is a bit of a sad thing because what it is trying to say is that this level of profligate, almost vulgar consumption will now be powered through a guilt-free, fat-free, carbon-free electricity source. And that I think can be changed. That narrative can be changed when we say that it is not the carbon-free, fat-free electricity that we're talking about. We will get carbon-free, fat-free electricity or truly a guilt-free consumption, a different kind of a consumption, a different kind of a distribution. So on matters like this, there has always been some traction. In terms of organizing points, and this was asked day before yesterday at one place, and I think that one of the key organizing points that we're finding is this aggressive push for growth. I think it is bringing people together because people are seeing what, for instance, the current government's entire emphasis on growth, kind of a pretty radical growth fundamentalism. That fundamentalism has a lot of repercussions on people because if you want to grow, you need coal, you need resources, you need water, and you need land. And law and people are standing in the way. So the government is going around trying to change the law and suppress the voice of the people. And this is a great mobilizing moment, and people are mobilizing. There's a lot of fights that are also being lost, but I think that more importantly, bad things are prevented from happening. When you want hope, Bhopal is there as a hope because Dow has been prevented from investing $1 billion. The world's one of the biggest chemical companies, announced to its shareholders in 2004 that Bhopal will not have a material adverse effect on its value and on its business prospects, despite Dow's acquisition of Union Carbide. 40 years down the line, they've been proven wrong. They're not being able to invest much in Bhopal. And you have numerous examples of POSCOs, again, a huge steel plant that is supposed to come up in an agricultural rich area. And people have literally kept the government out. There is, for the last 3 years, government officials have not been able to enter the village. No elections, no panchayat, no, you don't come in there to give anything. And the plant has been, the Korean president came and visited. Manmohan Singh, an environmental clearance was given as a diplomatic move. But you can give all the clearance you want, you can get the Supreme Court to say whatever you want. It is a democracy, people have to allow it. And when the people say no, then I think that there is a political dividend to be paid a political risk to be paid if you decide to run or to take against people.
empowering the community. Many towns. I think that's a really
No, it's a told you, I've been part of the struggle for the last nearly 16, 17 years. Where, yes, you do go through phases where you think, what the hell are you doing? Why am I doing this? Where are we going with this? Because a lot of times in Bhopal, we prevented bad things from happening. That in itself is a very good thing because it tells us that you actually have some power. So when I see what's happening in Bhopal, I mean, it took us a long time to get water, but there is water. And the people there haven't lost hope. The people there are ready to fight. I'm a solidarity worker. For me, that is enough. So if you're looking for where I get my batteries charged, I think it is the place where people on the ground are putting their lives at stake and fighting. And all I'm required to do is to say, yes, man, go for it. They'll never you. And that's very easy to do. In fact, I find that if I plan, then there'd be a different moment. It would take a different kind of a person as a solidarity worker. But as a solidarity worker, there's no dearth of inspiration, not just in India, but also in places like the United States. And there are people who are experimenting with all kinds. This is the belly of the beast. India is the belly of a smaller beast, wants to be a bigger beast. But in both these places, you have communities, you have people who are thinking differently. Alliances between people who would never have, sat together in the same room. And the alliances might not go far. I was just recently at a energy finance meeting with a financial analyst. And my friend was also there for that meeting. And so I would never have had a meeting in a room with people from the JP Morgan on the side of back out of my head. But here we were having discussions and talks about it. So I think that it's a nice thing. There are conversations happening across. We know that we might not travel for a very long distance together, but as human beings we tend to see because when I speak to the same people, they agree with you and emote with you on an individual level. At an institutional corporate level, they do things differently because that is what it requires. We have to change the rules of the business. And that's a rule changing person there. Gary, if you can even talk to us a little bit about your health, what you talk to me about in the coffee shop. Because there is there's like some master scheming happening. And that kind of scheming then allows you to change things at a very meta level. And then you see dividends happening. So, Gary?
Well, I'll just give one example. So I run an organization called environmental the healthcare sector, understanding that we're going to, help need to move upstream and investigate issues that are big. Describing community that is in a hospital, use their purchasing power and like that purchasing power is sustainable agriculture. Then create healthy food environments and and they're also beginning to educate people about the fact that food is medicine. And we can start to use organic and from that a lot of times that hey, it's about taking this incredibly powerful healthcare, which has compared to other healthcare that healthcare schools right first that framework that framework it actually supported that 50% of the economy here for energy products and sort of move out into the community. That's the case.
Yeah, but also this, there are two things that I would like to add to that. One of the things he said is, one question to that would have been, healthcare industry thrives in sick people. We need to have more sick people. So you say sick people cost a lot of money, given how things are set up. So now all of a sudden, healthcare industries, the rules of the country are such that the healthcare industry needs to ensure that people don't keep coming for the same disease. You can come for a different thing. So you need to start addressing certain kinds of things, and those are the kinds of things that affect the poor. Like, it might be obesity, it might be respiratory disorders that are caused from mold and carpets and things like that. So he's looking at ways by which you can get the community, the hospital to invest in the community from where they get the most of the patients, to look at ways of improving the transportation over there, planning, urban planning, how the house is built, how it's ventilated. This is fantastic stuff. And the second aspect is where the question that would have arisen is, but if I say no PVC or something else, then the alternative will be made by other corporations. So corporation benefits from this. So it's setting up a cooperative, which will be a purchasing hub for several of these healthcare operations. And then the cooperative will try and source from people who qualify for a certain kind of social and environmental criteria. I mean, this might not eliminate the corporation completely, but it is basically begun on the principle that corporations do not make sense. And that's a great start, because we constantly talk about how, the world cannot be run without corporations. And what I will do is, after a short pitch, is to play two songs. And this is from a series of concerts that we organized in Chennai. They call Justice Rocks. Because if you look at the way our campuses in India are currently organized, most of them are beholden to corporations. They cannot have a lemon and spoon race without having a corporate sponsor. So you have all the cultural festivals are sponsored by a big corporation. If you look at IIT Madras, it had a budget of 1 crore 80 lakh rupees. I don't know what 1 crore is 10 million, 10 million, right? 10.8 million rupees was the cost of 60 million rupees is $1 million. 10 million rupees, so 1/6 of $1 million, is the cost of a 5-day party in Indian Institute of Technology. And this 5-day party generates a huge amount of garbage. The garbage is thrown elsewhere. Somebody has to hand over these kids at the party, and you have 1.8 crores has been spent on the same. This money all comes from corporations. So we tell them that look at the kind of garbage, get the sponsors to change the material they're using. And the kids say, no, we can't do that because they're giving us money. Why do we do it without money from corporations? No, we can't have a party without money. So we started organizing these Justice Rocks concerts to show that you can have a good time without selling your soul to a corporation. So these are corporate-free areas. And unlike sponsored concerts where you sing praises of your sponsors, we have unsponsored concerts where we choose an unsponsor and make fun of it. So our first concert was called where it was about who, manufacture of monthly thermometers. And the second concert was called Don't Work for Dirty Now. We have a very subtle message. And the third concert was called Chill Out, which is unsponsored by the fossil fuel industry. Then we had something called Unclear Energy, that was unsponsored by Dr. Abdul Kalam, it was about nuclear energy. And we were obliged to make fun of Dr. Kalam. And then we have one called Culture Unplugged, that was unsponsored by the Culture Police and the Culture Fundamental. People were going on banning music because it is un-Islamic, or banning Valentine's Day because it's un-Hindu. So this was a takeoff on all those people without a sense of humor. What I will do is I will play you two songs after this, but before that, I have a short. Yeah. So the one of the key reasons why I came here, one is to attend this conference in New York on energy finance. The second one was to raise money for Bhopal, for the museum, and the third was to visit friends. And the last leg of the money raising expedition. The Bhopal Museum, we originally thought it would be a traveling museum. We have a bus, and then we would put the museum in the bus and take it to different pollution communities. It was a great idea, but it would be a complete disaster, if you ask me, because we don't know how to run a bus, and we're only learning how to run a museum. And it was about 3 times as expensive as what this fund currently was. Fortunately, we did not get the money for that. so we now have a beautiful three-room museum in Bhopal, for which we pay rent. We have two people who are survivors. One is called Safreen Khan, who you might have met. Safreen is a youngster who was part of Children for Dark Carbide, Children Against Dark Carbide. And Safreen is a very powerful leader. She is one of the employees in the museum, as another older woman. And then we have running costs. In total, it comes to with rent and all these things, it comes to roughly about $11,000 a year. And we're getting significant amount of contributions from India, from individual donations. We do not accept corporate or government money. And so we're also looking at the other basket of solidarity, which is the United States, to also pitch. So we have a separate kind of uh, page has set up a separate link for online donations. So people who uh, have some cash to spare and have an internet can donate through this. But there's also a daba over here that you can put cash, or you can put a check. The check has to be written in the name of Association for India's Development. And in the memo, you have to write Remember Bhopal Museum, otherwise the money will go elsewhere. Not so free, but not so free. The final thing is that, each of the staff members, it costs roughly $150 a month for staff in India. So any donations are welcome. If there are people who like to come and volunteer in the Bhopal Museum over summer, winter, whenever, there's a lot of outreach work that goes on with children in schools nearby. And so if you know Hindi, come over. Even if you don't, I think we can, you know English, then I think it's possible. If not, we'll find something else for you to do. So just two more songs. There's an iPad circulating over here. Yeah. So that's got the online donation. Against social pressure and moreover, despite this tragedy, there is much to celebrate. Celebration of the fact that the fight is still alive and the youngsters from Bhopal have joined the fight to hold down our country. To make it our way up and rehabilitate it. They are doing it. And fearfully, it's the village, the heart of the Bhakti, a place sacred to the followers of the 17th century revolutionary poet Saint Pugala. The followers of the revolutionary poet have been instrumental in preventing the concerning our chemical experimentation facility in that holy land. Without taking more time for the music again, I invite Vedanta, Anand, and Shiva to open the concert with a few songs, including Dr. about the market. Today, our book our concert is unsponsored by High Chemical and Green Carbide. This is also the time that around the same time that about 10 days after the bomb issue up, and the very appreciated environment, the appreciated in particularly targeting minority communities. So in Justice Rock's concert, if you're a seasoned professional musician, you're not allowed to enter the stage. You have to be young and probably somebody who's not stepped onto a stage. And you usually hope they're good ones, but even ones who don't sing very well are welcome to come and sing. This one is made by written by a girl called Sophia from Damat College. She was 50 years old.
Here's what's going to work. I'm going on and he's down. Yeah, you can hear me throw tomatoes at me. Okay, so here's how something is. So I'm volunteering with Boston. We have representatives from Boston and MIT here. They're not already on our mailing list. Please put the name down. Sign up sheet has gone with the part of MIT. Yeah, yeah. The part of MIT, please put it on the MIT list. Otherwise, put it on State Boston. We bring speaker events like this on a regular basis. We have one coming up on April 2nd. And then I is going to talk about it. Either the talk about the international session or the industrial corridors. We will send an email out about that. Please do come. We also have our annual marathon training starting soon. We have an info session on April 5th. It's happening at MIT. It's on a Sunday at 2 o'clock. So we don't have to go through. Yeah, but basically it's a fundraising marathon program where we all train together, we all raise funds. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time you are part of the cause as well. It's a great experience. A lot of us have done. I would welcome you to come to the info session. Okay, 1190. Yeah. So please come to the info session if you have friends who ever thought about running or being part of a good cause. Please bring them to be part of the world. Thank you.